So, who exactly was Romulus? A god, a king, a cold blooded murderer? Well, the story of Rome's founder is this incredible, tangled web of myth, history, and, as we're about to see, some brand new archaeological discoveries. It's the legend that really defined the most powerful empire in the ancient world. Okay, let's dive right into this. To get into this, we're actually not going to start way back in 753 BC. Nope, we're starting just a few years ago with this absolutely stunning find that has scholars buzzing, a discovery that brings this ancient legend crashing right into the 21st century. And look, this wasn't just found anywhere. We're talking about the Roman Forum, the very heart of the ancient city's political and social life. This chamber, they call it a hypogeum, dates all the way back to the 6th century BC. That's tantalizingly close to the time of Rome's legendary founding. Inside this chamber, they found a stone sarcophagus. It's just under 5 feet long and what looks for all the world like a simple circular altar. But here's where it gets weird. The sarcophagus was totally empty. No bones, no human remains, nothing. So you can see why this immediately sparked this huge question. I mean, given its location, its age, could this be what's called a cenotaph, an empty tomb, built as a monument to honor the one and only Romulus? This discovery completely reopens that age-old debate between the man and the myth. All right, so to really get why this is such a big deal, we have to rewind. We've got to go back to that foundational myth. The epic, violent, and honestly unforgettable story of two brothers who were destined to build an empire. The whole story kicks off with a divine connection. The twins, Romulus and Remus, were said to be the sons of Mars, the god of war himself. Their mother was a Vestal virgin, and their great-uncle, a usurper king named Emilius, saw these two babies as a major threat to his throne. His solution? Yeah, have them drowned in the Tiber River. But the river, which was flooding, actually carried their basket to safety. And this leads us to maybe the most iconic image in this entire legend. A she-wolf finds the abandoned babies and nurses them back to health. A woodpecker, another of Mars's sacred animals, even helps feed them, until a local shepherd, Faustulus, finds the boys and decides to raise them as his own sons. So the boys grow up strong, brave, natural-born leaders. After a run-in reveals who they really are, they don't just sit back, they totally seize their destiny. They rally some followers, march on the city of Alba Longa, kill the tyrant Amulius, and put their grandfather back on his rightful throne. A heroic return, right? But believe me, their story was just getting started. So with their grandpa back in charge, the twins decide, hey, let's found our own city. But right away, they disagree on where to put it. To settle things, they look to the gods for a sign, an omen in the form of vultures. Remus, on his hill, sees 6 vultures first. But then Romulus, on his hill, sees 12. So who do the gods favor? The guy who saw the birds first, or the one who saw more of them? Romulus declares himself the winner and starts plowing the sacred boundary for his new city on the Palatine Hill. Remus, probably still fuming, starts mocking him, and, in a fit of defiance, he jumps right over the shallow trench Romulus is digging, basically showing how useless it is. In a flash of rage, Romulus strikes his brother down and kills him. The city of Rome was founded on the murder of a brother, an act that would echo through Roman history. This idea that for Rome to live, even family might have to die. So, with Remus dead, Romulus is now the sole founder and king. He's got his city officially founded on April 21st, 753 BC. But, you know, a city is nothing without its people. And Romulus's methods for getting people were pretty radical. He declared his new city an asylum, welcoming anyone and everyone, fugitives, runaway slaves, men in debt, and people flocked to Rome. He even set up a council of elders, the very first Senate. But all this created one massive problem. Rome was a city of bachelors. Without women, there was going to be no next generation. He tried asking neighboring tribes for their daughters in marriage, but they all said no. So Romulus went to a much, much darker plan. It was a brutally pragmatic solution, really, that shows you a core Roman belief. The survival of the state justifies pretty much anything. He invited the nearby tribes, especially the Sabines, to a big festival. Then, at his signal, his men rushed into the crowd and kidnapped all the unmarried Sabine daughters. I mean, this was basically a declaration of war, and the Sabines, they were not having it.
They raised an army under their king, Titus Tatius, and they marched on Rome to get their daughters back and restore their honor. The two sides met for battle in the valley that would one day become the Roman Forum.
But then, just as the battle is raging, something truly incredible happens. The Sabian women themselves, who by now were Roman wives and, in some cases, mothers, they run onto the battlefield. They literally stand between their fathers and their new husbands, holding up their infant children, and they plead for peace with words just like these. And you know what? It worked. The fighting stopped, a truce was called, and they reached this unbelievable agreement. The two peoples would merge and become one. And right there, another cornerstone of Roman identity was forged. This amazing ability to absorb their enemies, to turn conflict into strength, and create something new and more powerful. Romulus went on to rule for nearly 40 years, and his city grew stronger and stronger. But his ending? Well, his ending would be just as dramatic and mysterious as his beginning. The story goes that Romulus was out on the Campus Martius, the field of Mars, reviewing his army. And suddenly, the sky just goes dark. A crazy tempest descends with thunder and lightning, and this thick fog completely swallows the king. And when the storm finally clears, Romulus is gone, vanished. So what happened? Two very different stories started making the rounds. The official version was that his father, the god Mars, had swooped down and taken him up to heaven in a chariot of fire. But a much darker rumor started spreading among the common people, that the senators, who were jealous of his power, had actually murdered him in the chaos of the storm, cut his body into pieces, and hidden the parts under their robes. The city was in an uproar, right on the verge of chaos. That's when a respected nobleman named Julius Proculus stepped forward. He claimed he'd been walking along a road when Romulus himself appeared to him, deified, in this shining, new, godlike form. And this vision came with a divine message for all Romans. Romulus declared that it was heaven's will for Rome to become the capital of the world. He told them to be strong and practice self-restraint, and that he would watch over them as their new god, Quirinus. Proculus's testimony calmed everyone down and cemented the divine legacy of their founder. Okay, so we've got the incredible legend, and we've got a potential shrine found just a few years ago. But what does the hard evidence actually tell us? How do we separate the man from the myth? You know what's fascinating? Even ancient writers weren't totally sold on this one single story. The great biographer Plutarch actually lists several other foundation myths that were floating around in his time. The story of Romulus and Remus was definitely the most popular, but it was by no means the only game in town. And here's where history really complicates the legend. Archaeologists have found evidence of huts and graves on the Palatine Hill, the very hill Romulus chose, that date back as far as 1000 BC. That means people were living right where Rome would eventually be founded for at least 250 years before Romulus supposedly drew his famous line. So this all brings us back to the ultimate question. After everything we've seen, the myth, the violence, the deification, all the conflicting evidence, did a man named Romulus actually exist? For a lot of historians and archaeologists today, the answer is kind of beside the point. As the archaeologist Paulo Carafa puts it, the literal historical truth of Romulus is less important than what he represented. He was the figure the Romans themselves chose to embody the founding of their state, their laws, and their massive ambition. Ultimately, Romulus gave Rome a story of divine origins, ruthless ambition, and just impossible survival. He was the model for what it meant to be Roman. And that really leaves us with a final thought to chew on. Does the power of a founding myth lie in its historical accuracy, or in the identity it forges for an entire people?